Although Roald Dahl is most famously regarded as a classic children's author, he was also many other things. In addition to having written many classic children's books such as Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the author also made more adult-oriented content that often contained racist and misogynistic values. However, the most surprising thing about Roald's life has been the revelation that he was working as a spy against the U.S. government during World War II. Join Facts First as we explore how children's author Roald Dahl led a disturbing double life. Roald Dahl was born in Wales on September 13, 1916. His father died while he was still young. As a child, he attended a school called the Cathedral School before transferring to a boarding school called St. Peter's. While attending the Cathedral School, Roald said he was caned for pulling a prank involving a dead mouse with 4 other boys at a local candy shop. This was the beginning of his long history with being a troublemaker, which arguably lasted past his adolescence and into adulthood. As his educational career continued, his experience with corporal punishment would as well. While attending St. Peter's, Roald shared that he was incredibly homesick for much of the duration and would satiate the sadness by writing letters to his mother. Roald would continue this tradition of writing letters to his mother until her death in 1967. After that, he found his mother had saved all the letters he had written, and many of them have been shared publicly. Roald began attending a school named the Repton School at age 13. It was infamous for its policies regarding corporal punishment, with staff and elder classmen given permission to cane other students. Roald suffered many canings and witnessed others suffering many more. He claimed this experience with corporal punishment left an incredible impression on him he never forgot. Although he later grew to success as an author, his teachers in school didn't consider him very good at writing. His work would often be returned with a bad grade and comments regarding the nonsensicality of what he'd written. Of course, that would later prove to be a benefit when it came time for him to try to stand out in the crowded children's literature scene. Over the course of his career, Roald was said to have coined hundreds of words. In addition to his studies, he was also a proficient athlete during his school years. He grew to be 6 feet 6 inches tall and used that height to his advantage when playing football, cricket, and squash. He even made captain of his school's squash team and had some leftover time to practice golf. He also made a hobby of photography, carrying around a camera with him nearly everywhere he went. Although Roald had been born in the UK, his mother was from Norway, and her family still lived there. Because of this, many of his childhood summers were spent in Norway. Much of Roald's time in Norway was documented in the book Boy, Tales of Childhood. One of the most memorable incidents depicted in the book included a time when Roald filled one of his relatives' pipes up with goat droppings. That relative went to smoke the pipe thinking it was tobacco, and young Roald was delighted. For his early career, he worked for the Shell Petroleum Company. He lived a life of luxury, selling oil to wealthy customers in various parts of Africa. During his time there, he was able to have personal experience with the continent's vast and incredible wildlife. Roald recounted seeing many lions and having encounters with black mamba snakes. In 1939, he joined the Royal Air Force at the beginning of World War II. While piloting an aircraft, he crash-landed and was severely injured. Although he didn't die, he suffered a fracture in his skull that caused him headaches for the rest of his life. These headaches made it so he was no longer fit to fly. So he was instead sent across to the U.S. as a spy. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. Following his accident in the Royal Air Force during the early days of World War II, he was sent to the U.S. At the time, the Americans were not yet involved in the war. Roald had been tasked with going to America to give lectures to citizens that were meant to encourage them to join the war effort. However, it turned out the British government was simply testing Roald to see if he'd be a good fit for a more subversive mission they were trying to perform. It has been revealed in the years since World War II, the British government had created a secret organization during the early days of the war that was meant to help create propaganda in America that would encourage the country to join in on the global war effort. It was dubbed the British Security Coordination, or BSC. Within a year of Roald's arrival in America, he had been officially brought into the BSC as a propagandist and spy. During the early days of WW2, America refused to join, instead promoting an isolationist attitude among its citizens. The British took offense to this, seeing Hitler and his Third Reich as the global threat they were. One of the BSC's missions was to abolish this isolationist attitude amongst American citizens. In addition to being tasked with the creation of subtle propaganda, Roald was also used directly as a spy. He had achieved some notoriety at that time and had developed a personal relationship with Theodore and Eleanor Roosevelt. Because of this, Roald was able to report directly to the British government about how the president felt about America's potential involvement in the war. There was also a more raunchy side to his life as a spy, which made him the perfect person to script the James Bond film You Only Live Twice many years later. Like James Bond, Roald wasn't just a spy, but an unmatched womanizer. With his height, charm, and velvety voice, he had many sexual liaisons during his years as a spy. He was able to seduce the wives of women in power and then report back to the British government whatever information they let spill during pillow talk. In addition to gathering information, he was also able to implant many of these women with the ideals of the BSC, and they would then echo them to their powerful husbands over breakfast the next morning. Whether or not Roald was single-handedly responsible or not, America did eventually enter into the war and aid the rest of the world in defeating the Third Reich. Roald's time as a spy against the American government may have come to an end, but the famous author continued to do controversial things throughout the rest of his life. In addition to Roald's popular children's material, like Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, he was also an author of more adult material. He famously wrote many humorous stories for adult periodicals that contained elements that might not fly in today's society. Given the less stringent nature of the times, Roald was allowed to get away with including some decidedly racist and misogynistic humor in his stories, including a good deal of anti-Semitism. Roald actually said some sympathetic things about Adolf Hitler later in his life. According to Roald, the infamous dictator had some good reasons for hating Jewish people, he just took it too far. In addition to being racist, misogynistic, and anti-Semitic, many have come to retrospectively classify Roald as just an all-around mean person. He apparently used his clout in the publishing industry to bully anyone he could, something he likely learned from his days in school. His first wife, who eventually left him in the early 80s, also considered Roald mean. His first wife was an actress named Patricia Neal, whom he married in 1953. Together, they had 5 children. Tragically, their first child died of measles when she was only 7. Another tragedy came when Patricia suffered numerous medical problems during her 5th pregnancy. She claimed her time with Roald was horrible, and he was continuously mean to both her and the children. After divorcing Patricia in 1983, he married a British film producer named Felicity Crosland. The two remained together until Roald's death in 1990. Although Roald didn't always have an amicable relationship with his children, they were by his side when he passed. He was said to have been very much at peace during his death, assuring his family he wasn't scared to go. The only thing he said he feared was the fact he was never going to see them again. His sentimental goodbye could have been the last thing the author said to his family, if it wasn't for the fact that his nurse poked him with a syringe immediately afterwards. This poke caused him to exclaim the F word. That became his very last, and he passed away November 23, 1990, at 74. Now it's time to hear from you. Comment down below what your favorite work from Roald Dahl is. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts Verse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.